Okay, let's talk about technology projection. It's a concept I'm sure you're familiar with, but I think most of you who are familiar with it, this talk is going to put it into a bit of focus and perspective. I call technology projection what some people will do once usually you have an emerging technology. They start to kind of like pushing it into use cases and applications that they're fundamentally far-fetched. And I mean this, it's not that it won't be able to work, it's just that you're outside of where it really shines, and sometimes it can be completely far-fetched, and it stops really being delivering what you really want to. The funny thing is, um, a few weeks ago I was at a defense conference, and this has kind of been the trigger about what I wanted to talk about this. During this defense conference, I did what I usually do. I walked the floor, take a bunch of pictures, and I made a commentary using pictures of the show about the state of Western drones. And what I really wanted to point out in here, and this is because if you are in this space right now entering, you may have noticed that there is a second wave of interest in drones right now. A lot of people who haven't seen the first few waves before, and they need to kind of be educated. And this was fundamentally my audience, but if you look at Western drones right now, they all look kind of the same. It's the same of industrial design because it's the same way of building everything. Everything is 3D printed. Everything is a bit sloppy. There's a lot of things already going on, etc., etc. And I was pointing this out in a way that I didn't want it to be an attack on anybody. I just wanted to be a commentary and serve as a piece of knowledge for people to be aware of it being a thing. And so as I was doing this, of course, a bunch of people got very offended by this aspect, specifically people working in the 3D printing industry. Their response to me was very typical. This funny thing is, a couple of days ago, I was listening to this podcast where Ray Dalio was saying that one of the biggest tragedy in the world is that people have a difficulty of taking any other perspective without necessarily seeing this as a fight. And this is fundamentally what happened. Not that it bothers me, right? Quite the opposite. All of this activity that went on created one hell of a platform. But the part that is important is to understand the underlying thing, because what happened in this specific context with the specific topic of 3D printing is as old as technology goes. And if you want to get better on an engineering on a product side of things, these are the things you're gonna want to be aware of and check yourself every now and then when you get carried away or excited by an emerging technology if you're projecting it into areas where it doesn't belong. So let's talk about this. So again, technology projection concept you're probably familiar. Let me dig down a little bit into examples that are going to make the case. This has been pretty much on absolutely everything that you would have before. I got another one that was funny is I was watching this short that came back on my feed, and people were pointing out how in Return to the Future, when Marty gets fired, or his dad, I forgot exactly, he gets you're fired on fire faxes machines. And that's because, at the time of the movie was made, the fax machine was, something great. So this, kind of cartoonish depiction of the future with that, you don't have one fax machine, you would have 4 fax machines. Now no one has, even a single one of them. This is a bit of tech projection. In the context of cinema, it can be funny, it can be quirky, but in context of product decision, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So taking this back into another wave of technology, IoT was a big one for me. So at least in my mind, it's one of these moments that it was a big one, still kind of is a big one right now, where the whole idea was that everything is going to be connected to the internet, right? So we had just created, Web 2.0, internet that was connected. Let's have every single devices that we have being connected. And no one was really wondering for 5 seconds whether or not you actually should be connecting all these different things, right? Everything had to be IoT because IoT was the thing that was trendy at the moment. And it died off just as quickly as it rised because precisely the thinking process behind this was not grounded into user cases, into how people would be relating to these functionalities and these capabilities. It was just, you find yourself in a bit of an echo chamber, you stop thinking, and everybody's just rushing and doing all this stuff. Now, did you ever need it to have a browser in your fridge? No, you didn't need a browser in the fridge. Even to detect what you have in it, eventually, could it potentially be something? I don't even think it would be. It's a different topic that I'm scratching the surface, which is I believe that we as people are not as predictable as the algorithm would like us to be. That's the entirety of the hint I'm going to leave on this topic because I'd like to be addressing it one day in more depth. But the list went on. And even in what I call the first generations of drones, which is, I don't call drones the predators and the big stuff. I call the drones the small drones, the things that were DJI things. And so, 2000 to 2015, It was kind of like exploratory phase. It was, on the path of really putting a camera that was usable into it. I'm not trying to touch the guys who are putting, analog cameras in the 90s on FPV stuff. I'm talking about something that just about anybody could use. And so this second wave, I would say 2013 till 2020, was really where drones became flying for fun, flying camera concept, and then they became enterprise drones as they became tools that allow you to have access to insights, etc. All this effort get been hindered, but during that first generation, you really had a lot of tech projection that were going on with the drones, and there's stuff that are again mild and things that are very very far-fetched. There's difference between mild and far-fetched. Before I let it go and focus on the technological projection that happens on drones, I often characterize it whenever I put people on the exercise of thinking about how they should be building the products. I draw these three concentric lines, circles. You can find this in my book. And you have in the very center, you have the things that are absolutely mandatory, the most important for your product. Secondary is like, the things that gravitate, but not, and then the third one is like extension, the things that goes on. This concentric design is something that you should keep in your mind, because it's the exact same thing that goes in. You can go in with a user story, with the applicability, with the strength. It goes on and on like this. And you see this technological projection when you enter in that second and third ring that you would have in terms of usability for the product in the context. Back to drones. So quadcopters were everywhere. They could do everything. We were going to put them anywhere. And the funny thing is, I had a meeting that was really pointing out to me that we were really navigating this. I was in downtown Palo Alto in the office of a prominent VC firm. I'm not going to give any names. And we had a bit of a conversation that was, very textbook Silicon Valley VC. And he started by asking me like, hey man, where are all the drones? And I said, but what do you mean? He was like, well, I was promised a revolution that it would be drones everywhere and everything. And I said to him, well, you're not going to see them on University Avenue. It's not going to happen like that. And he was like, but why? They're supposed to be so great and everything. I was like, but you don't want them. They're loud, right? They're noisy. They're basically flying lawnmowers. You don't want that zipping up and down on University Avenue, bringing people's their lattes straight from Starbucks or whatever. He says, this is not what you want. This is like, it's not a real use cases that was going on. And at that moment, it was very clear that, he unwillingly was doing this thing, this technological projection. So I explained to him that the drones were very, very, very good at being where we don't really want to be, right? So accessing things that would otherwise be very dangerous for us, accessing things that would otherwise be impossible for us. This is really where they shine. Now, that doesn't mean that drone delivery don't make any sense, but you don't need a drone delivery for full blocks, right? You can just walk full blocks. You should walk full blocks. Full blocks is actually great for you to do this. And I would even go into characterizing that walk to Starbucks is 50% of the value of going to Starbucks. Get some fresh air, get some fresh ideas, take a break into what you were doing. This is actually very, very beneficial for you to actually do. You don't want the drone to take that away from you. And then there's another aspect of the drones that were going on is like, multi-rotors, so quadcopters mostly, they're very, very good at vertical assets. They're very good at going up and down. They're very good at having this agility to be able to navigate the 3D space. But in terms of energy, they're consuming a lot of it to maintain their position in space. And so that's why when you want to be doing horizontal assets, large horizontal assets, this is where fixed wings drones are becoming a lot more interesting. Again, drones as well, but this was one of these projections that was really going on. And a projection that I live firsthand, because in my work that we're doing, we were delivering massively multi-rotors, and we were very good at this. And so that got a lot of people very excited into what they could do with it, and it started to kind of project them unwillingly and creating what I often call a 99% problem. Now, on the concept of 99% problem, which touches on technology projection from the product perspective, but not from the user, is that you have a user, you give them a tool that is really working, right? Think about a DJI drone that is, really reliable. You turn it on, it's going to work. And I'm not trying to tickle people, their software updates and everything. I know all this stuff. But I mean, like, it's going to work, right? So that's, you start thinking about your world through your starting point that is working, where you're not thinking from the perspective that, hey, maybe I should approach this problem from a completely different perspective. That's because you're a user, right? And you creating a 99% problem, which is like, you're super excited to get to the 100% because you already feel a 99% percentage of being covered. You think like, oh, just if this, that last percent is going to be done, not knowing that that last percent will never be covered with your approach. It was a dead end, but that keeps leading you on. And it may look like it's technology projection on the part of the user, but that's not. The technology projection is on part of the product person who was kind of trying to put this robot in there. And there's reason, at times there's discovery of the limitation. There's a lot of valid reason to do it, but it's still technology projection that you're doing, and you should know that you're actually trying to force something that isn't going to work, right? So in this conversation that I had back into this event what I was in, and I posted this stuff on the 3D printing in the state of Western journals. A lot of people get triggered. Some people made some very good comments, right? Number one, the fact that the examples that I had posted on pictures could be better than this with existing 3D printing technology if you knew about proper DFM and everything, which is all true. But they all kind of missed the point that what I was really pointing out on a specific aspect of the 3D printing, which is I mentioned the over-reliance on 3D printing. And this over-reliance exhibits itself as technology projection. Now, what I mean by this is that it's kind of like the same scenario I was talking a second ago with that person who starts seeing the world of their solution through a quadcopter because the quadcopter is the solution that is present right there, right? So it's a user, right? So they're kind of seeing this web. This is why I use this story. It's kind of blends in. Are you doing it? Are you not doing it? As a product person, you definitely are. As the user, maybe not. And in this particular case, you start seeing that, oh my God, I have all these manufacturing problems that I have in this machine. These 3D printers are capable of doing it for me. I'm going to start going on with it. And you get yourself into these 99% problem because you're evolving in technology projection. And this over-reliance manifests itself in a way that you have a lot of people who do not understand manufacturing, who do not understand what you can and cannot expect really from 3D printing. Their relationship with it is really that I really don't understand this entire realm of manufacturing in capabilities, difficulties, simplicities, or whatever. But this tool is just making it easy for me. And so you become completely reliant on that technology to do what you have, and you start seeing geometries that should not be printed to begin with. If this is foreign to you, if you think I'm delusional about what I'm saying right now, first of all, you have totally the right to believe that in case this stuff needs to be repeated. But you can just go on any of these 3D printing communities and look at some of the models and the projects that are going on out there. And you're going to see that overwhelmingly the majority of the designs, they don't print well. They don't print well with the settings that are given. They don't print well with the printers that have been selected. Now, admittedly, this got a lot better since Bambu got in the game because their printer is just so capable and so affordable that, what was now possible is completely different. But I remember vividly over the years, downloading countless little designs that look really good and then realizing that this was never going to work, right, once you actually put it together. And so that's the part that I wanted to really bring up to this attention. In this context, what you really have is just like, I'm not saying people not to 3D print anything, right? I'm using it all the time. It's not the problem. I'm not going to go around and try to justify my relationship with 3D printing. But what I'm really trying to point out is that we're seeing in here a technological projection because the West doesn't know how to manufacture things with other aspects. Now, if you work in manufacturing, if you're the expert in your field, good for you. But objectively, you're going to have to acknowledge the fact that you're an exception in the West, right? You do not evolve in an environment where there's a plethora of options, and those options are very mature and very accessible, and the connection to what you know and what you do, and the actual people who are trying to design and build products is, very uniform, very mainstream, because that's not the case. That's really not the case. Hopefully, it will become the case again. We shipped everything out to China decades ago, and we kind of left it off. And that's kind of the thing to address one way or another, right? But nevertheless, today, this knowledge of manufacturing is now here. People are over-relying on 3D printing. They're seeing this overwhelmingly as this magical box that's going to be producing whatever you want. There's not enough thought process that is being putting in, and there's an over-dependency because people think that you can just 3D print everything. And you just can't. Even if you're going around with super high-quality stacks that exist, even if you keep pushing the boundaries, these are the things that are not going to work. Now, continuing on to technology projection, so really get the point across and understand, I'm going to give you two more. One that is actively going on right now, and one that is coming up around the corner that is starting to show the cracks. The first one is the FPV drones. So, FPV drones is the bread and butter of things that we're working on right now. I'm working on right now. And they're great. They're super simple. They fly very well. They're very, very capable. And the interesting part about them that I found, most people have not understood is that what made FPVs really good is that they were basically making accuracy extremely cheap in a defense context. And a lot of people are looking at it this way. And a lot of people are really thinking about, the FPV experience, the tinkering, the connecting together. And that's really not how it is. It's just about making affordable precision to some extent. And if you start looking at it as a product this way, then you actually can open up your mind into where things would be actually going and where it's really capable. One other thing I'm seeing where FPVs are being projected in a context where I have serious skepticism about, it's the design and invention of the interceptor drones. So basically over the past 6 months, everyone and their mother has created an interceptor drone. And these are like basically a quadcopter with a missile-shaped kind of like body in the middle. And they fly at 400 kilometers, usually at the maximum amount of thrust that a vehicle can give you. And the hope is that this is actually going to be able to intercept. It may very well work. I am extremely skeptical for a couple of reasons. Number one, because the insistence on FPV in here, on terms of technology, really doesn't mean much. The point of quadcopter that a lot of people in this industry at this point have forgotten is that by having the control being removed from a mechanical system like you would have on the gyrocopter to an electrical one, meant that you could actually have injected blades, very simple, fixed BLDC, brushless DC motor coming in, very simple, and then bring all that control and software into the ESC, the electronic speed controller. That's where it was really valuable. But therefore, the control authority that you were having was directly correlated to your ability to actually change the speed between the motors. And I am really not certain you're going to have the control authority you want to have, 400 kilometers an hour, to be able to do correction and interception, or the battery power you're going to have to try and retry to actually hit something on this point. I think the operational window that this technology is going to be offering is going to be very limited. On the other hand, and very, very as a bit of a maybe a hint to the industry, I don't think these would work without thrust vectoring, just to put it this way. Talking about thrust vectoring, I think that the whole missile aspect has been dismissed because of the cost that he has for it, and totally understandable. A lot of people coming around and says like, I don't even remember the numbers, but I think it's like 100K was stopping you with a $3 million missile, right? Now, first of all, there's a fallacy in the unit economics because the actual cost of that Shahed hitting a target or killing people is much more than 3 million, right? So that's not, that extravagant in terms of the sizes and everything, right? The second aspect is that what about trying to make, missiles cheaper? What about trying to tap into rocketry and figuring out how actually you can make it? There is no reason you can't disrupt it. There's a lot of people who have done at the obvious level a lot of very interesting disruption. I don't want to talk about this because it's a bit of a type of technology that is very sensitive, but look around. There's a lot of stuff going on out there, and I'm talking about solid rocket engine. I'm talking about liquid rocket engines being 3D printed by students. There's a lot of things going on out there that would mean that you could be able to have that kind of control systems behind your interceptor system. Now, I'm not coming around and telling you about this is how this particular business should be done. I'm here to coming around and says like, we went a little bit quick into taking a quad frame and putting it on an aerodynamic shape and then calling it a day. Not enough has been done to actually look into the rocketry aspect of things. And that's making me think that there's a lot of technology projection going on right now on the FPV into something that is completely different, that was never really intended by the technology in any way, shape, or form. And that's, dangerous aspect of things. So that's for the one that is right now in terms of technology projection. The second one that I would give you as the thing that is about to arrive is all the humanoid robots. And I think I'm going to get quite a few people being pissed off about this. But I looked about humanoid robots for a long, long, long time. On the product standpoint, on the technology standpoint, and everything like this, etc. Just for the record, my particular position is that there's a lot of companies out there who can do incredible machines in terms of robotics. So it's not an attack on their ability to actually do this. This is purely a product definition conversation. Okay. So, but the humanoid robots makes no sense to me. No sense at all. They don't work whatsoever. It reminds me of that talk that Neil deGrasse Tyson did. He repeated this on multiple occasions, so you'll find an instance of it, where he was talking about how we as humans, it was a very arrogant stance for us to believe that if there was an alien intelligent form, that they would want to come and visit us. And his point to it is that when you see an ant or a worm, right, on things, you don't go and stop and try to understand what you know, people would step on it because it's so insignificant compared to our great intelligence that this is a relationship we have. And so in this talk, what I thought was very interesting is this de facto assumption that we as human in our form, right, bipedal to hands and stuff, we're kind of like the ultimate form, right? The best possible way to express anything. You see it in some sci-fi, right? You know, the alien is basically a humanoid but with a blue skin, stuff like this. And I thought this was a very interesting thing because I don't think the humanoid is the best expression of a robot ever. And that is including having a robot that would navigate human infrastructure. And what I'm really seeing is that this is fundamentally the biggest opportunity that exists in mobile robotics. It's the scariest as well. The opportunity is to create machines who are hyper specialized to do a certain amount of tasks, but not trying to be universal at doing everything. And I think right now what you're seeing is we start to see some people, you know, people are much bigger experts than I am in mobile robotics coming around and challenging this whole idea that humanoid robots are going to be the thing that, you know, people are telling you you're going to have one in everybody's home, etc., etc. And my premise is that this is really this projection. It's not a technology projection in this particular case, because the incentive of creating the robot didn't come from a technology projection. But now you start seeing that, yeah, we can build a humanoid robot. I can create a legged robot. Let's project that on every task that we would have out there, right? But if I want to make a robot that is moving boxes, that's not the best shape. If you don't trust me, look at what Boston Dynamics did. They did a phenomenal robot that is on 2 wheels, that's capable of grabbing boxes, etc. That's not a robot. That has hands. And they have done a phenomenal work with the Atlas series on the robot side of things, etc. There is going to be a lot more of these aspects. Now, of course, this legged capability is going to translate into robots that really are going to make sense. But you see so many humanoid companies right now that are going on and really trying to create with the five digits that we have. I mean, even the 5 digits that we have, right, they're great, but this is the key part, right? And if this is the key part, why would I just want one on each side? Why not more? Why not going into suction and all the different aspects? The list goes on and on and on. Now, the jury is not out for this. And so I could be completely wrong. But there's already people, like I said, who are coming around and start challenging the whole status of the humanoid robots and where they really sit in all this. And so that makes me think that there's a case of technology projection that comes in. Right. So with all of these examples and all these different stories and everything, I'm not even trying to address the whole thing that happened on this whole 3D printing. My point is I'm trying to really get product people out there and engineers, because engineers have a voice in the product cycle, as they should, to take 2 seconds and then, you know, check their biases, check where things are really going, etc. Because, you know, the way it goes in the tech industry is just that if you get it wrong, you know, there's no really postmortem and real looking at things. It's not something that is being done publicly. If your product is not fitting what the person on the other side really would want to do, you just fail, and you fail quietly, and, you know, you shoved in the back with all of the countless hopes and dreams that were behind. So it's more important, especially with hardware, especially with products that are the most difficult for the West to do, not to get lost in a side quest, in a venture, especially if it's fueled by, you know, technology projections.